You say about that period in the book that one of the compounding problems was even if you had gone to anyone else in the military, even if you'd gone to a mental health professional or if you'd gone to a chaplain and you'd explained to them, look, I'm suicidal because I'm gay, then you would have been discharged. They would have had an obligation to, you would have told that would be part of the don't ask, don't tell prohibition.
Absolutely. If I would have went to a mental health professional or anything like that, it would have been quote unquote telling. So maybe I would have gotten the help that I needed at the time, but I still would have been discharged. And you have to understand the reason that I went in was to be able to better my life, was to be able to go to college afterwards and do all that. So if I were to get kicked out under don't ask, don't tell, all the reasons that I had for joining, as opposed to serving the country and all that, which is one of the reasons.
But the actual benefits.
The actual benefits I would have lost. So it created a lot of tension, all the time that I was in the military.
Was the culture of the military more macho, more homophobic than you expected it to be?
Well, it was more macho and more homophobic for me because I was actually in the United States Army Infantry. Now, the infantry is the hardest job in the military. It's actually still not open to female soldiers in the U.S. Army. So that is a culture that is very hypermasculine, very homophobic, very macho. And it was really hard as a 17-year-old kid to kind of fit into that culture.
And you say, you relate that one of the first interactions that you had in the military was someone barking in your face. What are you, a faggot? What are you looking at me like that for? What are you, a faggot? We've got one of our viewers is commenting online here. Andrea Wilson asks a question. From what I hear from my friends, gay slurs are used quite frequently to motivate others in the military. Is homophobia pervasive?
I feel like homophobia was pervasive at the time. And
how long ago are we talking about, though?
We're talking about.
You're not an old guy.
No, I'm not an old guy.
Back in my day, there was homophobes.
Well, you have to realize that I was 17 years old, so that was about 14, 15 years ago. I'm 31 years old, so I guess I'm busting on my age. It was a very homophobic element, and I think that the book starts with that very first day of basic training. I'm basically fresh off the bus. I am different in so many ways in that place and time. I'm the only black soldier. I'm maybe a little gay, whatever, but I'm having this barked in my face, and I get that in my face like immediately from the drill sergeant. So it was a lot.
You talk about thinking about Barry Winchell, who was the private who was murdered after he started dating a male-to-female transsexual.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at the quote in your book about that. You write, I'd find my mind drifting back to thoughts of Barry Winchell. His death scared me. Could I be the next PFC Winchell? I didn't know whether these guys in my platoon or squad were just a few beers away from a fag witch hunt, but I certainly didn't want to find out. Were you ever scared?
I read that Rolling Stone article on Barry Winchell literally the day I flew out to my first duty station. It scared the hell out of me. It scared me more than anything I had ever read before about the policy or anything that I'd even experienced in basic training. It really felt like the difference between life and death. It felt like keeping that secret, being in the closet, whatever it is you want to call it, could have been the difference between life and death. It really scared the hell out of me.
How much do you think it's changed the culture?
I think it's changed a little bit. I think that there are still a lot more things that we need to do. In a lot of the talking I've been doing about this book and about this project, I wanted to bring attention to the fact that even though Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been repealed, there's still a lot of fundamental things that we still need to do towards protecting LGBT soldiers and veterans. Transgender soldiers are still not allowed to serve openly in the United States military. Thankfully, the Palm Center has actually just approved a $1.35 million grant in order to study this, to study the effects on unit cohesion, combat readiness, all that stuff of transgender soldiers serving. What we also do not have is a non-discrimination policy that actually protects LGB soldiers based on sexual orientation in the military right now. So what I mean is that as an African-American soldier in the military, I'm part of a protected class. As an African-American or race, gender, religion, those are things that are protected. So if I felt like I was being discriminated against on the basis of one of those things, there are actually channels that I could go through. LGB soldiers today do not have that protection.
Was there any glimmer of acceptance? Were there any people who were around you who made you feel like it was okay, who kind of understood what you were going through, even if you didn't come out openly?
Absolutely. I had a best friend. His name was, well, we'll just say Howard, because all the names in the book are pseudonyms. Best friend in the military name was Howard. We bonded over love of all things geek. I'm a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, right? So we would always talk about that. And I remember coming out to him the night before we shipped off to Iraq. So at 20 years old, when I shipped off to Iraq, I'm dealing with these issues of life and death that I don't think any 20-year-old should ever have to deal with. So I just came out to him. I said, you know what, I'm gay. And he said, I know. I saw you looking really hard at Angel when we were watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I kind of got it. And so we just talked that whole night about being gay, about being afraid to go to Iraq, about this guy that had just broke my heart and all this other stuff. So it started coming out, and there were people that were actually open to it. And what I found that through coming out to him, we were able to have a stronger bond. And that bond was something that I think kept me safe and kept me alive when I actually did deploy.